Steven, thank you so much for coming.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. Can you give them a little background on who you are, what you do, what you're into, and all of those good things?
Yeah, for sure. Hey guys, my name's Steven. I was born in Miami, Florida. I went to elementary, middle school, and high school here. And the only portion of my life so far where I left was to go to Orlando to UCF for college. And now I am back here and working full time.
That's awesome. And where do you work?
I work at PwC,
Okay. What's that?
and it is one of the big four accounting firms, and I work in auditing.
Okay. Interesting. You want to dive into that space a little bit and give us some insider info?
Yeah, so I started out with, even in high school, I went to a magnet school called Coral Reef Senior High School, and even there they had some opportunities to go out and to even like get my feet wet and start learning a little bit about business. And I had went ahead and I always thought about what I wanted to do. And there were some other stuff that maybe came up and maybe like, oh, financial planning, and it seemed like interesting, but I really wanted to know how a business works. So I thought, oh, what better way to do that than to start a career in accounting. And at the high school, they did a decent job of just like going into stuff, at least so I had some sort of a basis. And it wasn't until college to where things started to really ramp up. And then I started like learning more, taking a lot of these harder classes and really getting into the nitty-gritty of understanding anything into the business environment.
That's awesome. So you're one of the big four firms and you're in auditing. So what exactly are you auditing within that space there?
So in me personally, I'm in a group called SIPS, which stands for Consumer Industrial Products and Services. And for me, we audit public and private companies around the greater Miami area.
Oh, so it's local.
So the firm is worldwide,
Yeah.
but in terms of like our Miami office, it's typically around Miami, Fort Lauderdale, to where most of the clients are.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And
You
yeah,
get to do it right in your backyard. Like, you know all these businesses, and that's kind of cool.
yeah, exactly. It is a little bit easier when you kind of live in a bigger city, so you don't. I mean, there's still a lot of commuting involved. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as much to where you have to always be somewhere else.
Sure. Well, that's super cool. Okay. So you got the accounting in there. And what else do you like to do?
And when not doing accounting, I like to wake up early and run. Huge, huge runner here. I started that in my junior year of high school as well, and I kind of just kept that going. And I'm really glad I did because it was not cool at the time. And now with all the run clubs rising, it ended up being like a very cool thing to do, and I've enjoyed it very much.
That's awesome. So you said it wasn't cool back then. What wasn't cool about it back then? Were people like, why are you running? Or run club just wasn't the it thing to do in high school? Or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, like in high school, there's a bunch of other things that are happening, and people are like developing, growing, etc. There's a bunch of other sports and like other stuff that people are doing, right? So not everybody necessarily goes ahead and says, "Oh, I want to be a runner," you know. And it's funny because a lot of people say that like running, like people get into it by accident a lot of times, and I'm no exception to that rule actually, because I was always, ever since I was younger. And my dad got me into this, but I was always like a basketball player, always had a basketball in my hand, kind of like a you always carry a basketball in your hand sometimes.
You roll into the house, I got a basketball in my hand, you're like, you always have a basketball in my hand. I need something to play with, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I got to stay busy with my hands. So.
No, I completely get you on that. So ever since I could hold something too, I'd always be like holding a basketball, even when I was younger, doing like dribbling drills inside the house, even if we had like the room to be able to do it.
Sure.
And I started out with basketball. That was one of my first loves. I played in a bunch of community leagues. I played numerous games in the Coral Gables high school gym, which has actually been there since the 50s. I don't know if you know that, but it's been there forever. They have like titles of like state championship titles since the 50s, which is crazy.
That's wild.
But just very cool. Basketball did take me around a lot of places. And then once I got to high school, I went ahead and I did make the basketball team my first 2 years. In the third year, I got pretty close, and I ended up getting cut that year. And I just thought to myself, I was like, oh man, like what, like, and it was pitched out to me like, oh, I could play rec league, but I was like, okay, like I don't know, I want to do something like for the school, right? I want to try to do something like another sport. Basketball is one of those sports where it's very tough. Only 5 guys get on the court, and maybe there's double that or more that are like on the team.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I want to go ahead and I want to do something where I can go ahead and play. And I was debating between actually running and lacrosse.
Okay.
And lacrosse is a cool sport, and I just couldn't really get a lot of the stick stuff down in time, even though I thought I had like decent athleticism for it. So I thought, oh, in training in basketball, I had like a decent mile, so why don't I just go out there? I don't know if I'm like be an amazing sprinter necessarily, but like with long distance, maybe I'll go ahead and find my people and get my role. And lo and behold, that was a great choice, because now it's something I'm still doing now, and that's not a lot of people can say with their high school sports.
That's interesting. I think a lot of people say that you can always train distance, but you can't train speed. Is that what they say often?
I think you can definitely go ahead and train both, but like speed is something to where it comes from a lot of like base athleticism and
like genetics or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah, like I can tell you like going up in distance is easier than actually coming down, because you can always like I guess be slower and like do the distance and kind of be like mental through it. But
yes,
that, like,
exactly.
Speed, like some like straight speed, you kind of have to like really train, and being like other sports I've been doing it for a while. Like, it's very hard to go from like couch to speed.
Yeah.
You know?
So I ran track. So interesting enough story. I played baseball, and baseball was my favorite sport. And I played until my sophomore year of high school. And sophomore year, I get in trouble. I get an underage drinking ticket or whatever. So the school finds out about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get that underage. I have to talk to the coaches, and basically that all shook out. And then I was going to be suspended for, I don't know, 3 games, I think it was. So I go through tryouts, and honestly didn't perform that well during tryouts, and the coaches tried to put me on JV. Now, our baseball team was pretty good. I think we were like top 5 in the state, but I had such a big ego at the time. I was like, no, I'm not going to be on JV baseball. Like, this is my sport. Like, I'm really good. Like, middle school, I was tearing it up, all these things, right? So they tried to put me on JV. I was like, absolutely not. Walked out, right? So I quit baseball sophomore year, cold turkey right there. Now, oh, wait, sorry, this was my junior year. This is my junior year.
Oh yeah, I mean that makes sense. Oh yeah, because the junior on JV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So junior on JV. So this is my junior year. So I walk off, and then I still had my suspension, but I was a football player, and I really didn't want to be suspended for football. So I started running track to eat up my suspension, but then I also kind of fell in love with it and just started running and all these things. But I ran 110 hurdles and 300 hurdles.
Wow.
Now, hurdles, it takes some time to figure out how to hurdle over those things, right? Like, I was just trying to run through them and run over them and all this wild stuff. So it took a while for me to get my form down. Ate up my suspension, then went into football, and I was all state in football. And then I ended up being all conference or something like that for track in the 110s, which was super cool. So it ended up working out, but I too got into running kind of in a weird way. So that was a wild event, but that's actually where we met. We met at Run Club.
Yeah, that's right. At the shout out to Coconut Grove Run Club.
Coconut Grove Run Club.
I still try to go every Wednesday. I still try to go out even today, and it's crazy. That's that one too. I didn't even go there when it started. I probably went around 3 to 4 months in. And there was even like 20, 30 people, and I was like, wow, this is even huge for a run club. Like, normally when I would go to run clubs, which my first one I joined in college at UCF called the Night Runners Club, that was, sometimes if we got 10 or 15, that was a great day. And this was 30. I was like, wow, there's so many people. This is so cool. And then fast forward to now, and the club's already about a year, and run club culture really took off.
Sure.
And now it's about 100, 150 people, and it just absolutely blows my mind. But it's really cool and special, and I see people, funny enough, that I never would have imagined or never would have been into running, or now getting into it because it's the thing to do now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's awesome because you don't need any equipment. It's a natural movement. It's really good for you, a really good way to stay healthy. So why not do that in camaraderie? You know what I mean? And then you talk about Brickell Run Club, for example. How many people are in that now? 400 people every time. They shut down the streets, and it's this big event, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I've been to that one too. The Brickell Run Club is huge. That was always a kind of bigger one. They were, I guess, I would say one of the first definitely bigger ones in the area.
Yeah.
And I've even maybe my first time going out to that, I was like, wow, this is crazy. And especially because in that area it's a lot more compact too. So I couldn't even imagine seeing that many people run in one place. But they go ahead. They have a good group there. They'll make sure that like when people cross, it's like safe to cross and everything, and they'll make it happen.
Yeah, sometimes get police escorts now. It's wild, but I think that there's a big thing with run clubs as far as it being a place to meet people, like significant others, kind of like a dating thing, right? Like I think there's a big presence of that in Brickell. I see all the TikTok and Instagrams like, oh hey, run club is the best place to meet your significant other. So I don't know, I think a lot of people go to run and stay healthy, and then a lot of people go to meet people. A lot of people go to find a significant other. But I think all of those things are very cool opportunities. Like that's what you get from collaborating with people. Just, you never know who you're gonna meet, and it's such a fun environment to be around.
Absolutely, it's very open too, and I feel like through here, especially with, I mean, there's been some amazing gyms down here, like Lifetime being one, and they're very cool, but they are like very expensive as well.
It's like $400 or $300, $400 a month, right?
Yeah, it's something like
Insane.
that, and they always hit you with sign-up fees too when you start. I mean, it's just a lot, and for the people that like need that stuff, it's amazing. It's probably super amazing facilities and all. But for your like a lot of your like 20s and younger 30s who haven't built up a lot of money and want to save something, like I'll just go out there and run and probably almost arguably get in better shape than the people that have all this stuff in facilities anyway.
Absolutely.
And then also, I tell people all the time, if you run to the point where you can like get very good at it and get very comfortable in like your little zone 2 as they call it, like easy runs, you can just talk to people too, and it feels like almost like the same as if you're going on a walk and just talking.
Yeah.
So it can get very, very social. And a lot of sports I don't feel like are as social as running can be.
100%. I agree. So are you close to a lot of the people at Coconut Grove Run Club? I feel like you're pretty intertwined with that community.
Yeah, I've went ahead and then just really, what I try to do in these run clubs too, kind of my tactic for meeting people is to just like meet one person and then meet their friends and then meet their friends, and eventually you get to meet everyone.
Yeah.
And then I also try to think to myself, I'm like, okay, let's just meet one new person today. Even if I know a lot of people, I'm just meet one new person. If you could do that and get one name, like that's good enough, and eventually it'll flow and the networks just start to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I approached it too. It was like I want to meet one person. Then I met you. And then I met Brant because he was wearing a Wisconsin hat. Do you know Brant?
Yeah,
Rowan?
yeah.
So he's super cool. But as far as the people who started Run Club, are you close with them too?
Yeah, I ended up meeting some of the people that started, because they used to always be, I mean they still do, but they used to always be like running. It was less, I guess, when we started out. They were I guess more focused on running, and sometimes they would just like sit back and more try to direct, which is completely understandable when it gets big. But when they were like always going and running, I made sure to meet like all the OGs in the club, and anybody that was like the first day people there, I was like, oh, these people seem like a super cool community. Like I got to make sure I go ahead and meet everyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes even now I'm still meeting people that I'm like, oh my god, you've been here this whole time, and I haven't really had a lot of like good conversations with you,
Yeah, it's hard to touch everybody, but yeah, there's just such quality people at Run Club. It's like people that want to take care of themselves, want to stay healthy. They're social because they typically go with like an open mindset as well. So it's such a cool experience, man. And I'm really happy we met. You came over together like last week or 2 weeks ago too. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, Run Club has been tremendous. So that's a big piece of your life, running, right? I think recently, did you just run a marathon?
Yes, I did. I just ran my 4th.
Your 4th?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't run any.
No, it's something that really takes time. Honestly, when I signed up for my first marathon, I was completely scared, and when I did it, I was like, oh my god, I just signed up for a marathon, and it was a lot at the time. I guess the only thing I did before was maybe I think I ran one half marathon before.
Sure.
And then I had a group of friends signing up, and I thought to myself, oh, this is a little crazy. I don't know if I'm going to do this. And then I just got convinced and said, you know what? If it scares me, I got to go out and do it. Let's just give it a shot.
Power through.
And that first one, like looking back, so I ran the Miami Marathon was my first marathon in 2020. So this is right before everything with COVID happened too, probably a month before.
Wow.
And I went out, and in this first one, I actually qualified for the Boston Marathon, which was
your
awesome.
first one you qualified?
Yeah. And
That's crazy.
So what did work into my advantage is that so I'd run a ton of 5Ks before. So I was very proficient in the 5K, a decent 10K, even a half. There was like one half marathon. I think it was the OUC half marathon in Orlando. I used to always run that one, and when it came up, I thought to myself, oh, okay, maybe I'll just go out here and run like a decent time. And I was probably thinking, I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna run around like a 120 something, whatever. And I go out there and I had a good group, and it was like perfect weather that day, and I just ran like a 117, and I was like, oh my goodness, okay, if I can do that, I could definitely throw together like 2 splits that are gonna be, you know, below 130 for each half. I could definitely like go around like 126 and do that twice or something like that for a full marathon and get it done. And first Miami, man, it was a lot, and it was crazy but exciting. It is a little tough because a race like Miami, sometimes too, some of these races, the field is only so big in terms of when you get the runners trying to go and qualify for Boston. And a lot of other runners will tell you this Miami too. You with people the whole way going through, and then once you hit that 13 and you split for the marathon, like I had a whole little pack. I'm like, I got my flow, let's do this. And we split off, and I'm the only one that goes right, and they all go left. And
So
I'm
they,
like, oh my goodness.
so they were all running halves,
Yeah, like a lot of the
and
people.
you were pacing with the halves essentially. So you thought that they were going to continue?
Yeah, I thought maybe I get like 1 or 2 people.
No,
right?
no.
Like if there was like a pack of maybe 6 people, I'm like, oh, maybe 1 or 2. But nope, it was just me. See
That's
ya.
wild. That's crazy. So that was 2020 Miami first marathon.
Yes, 2020 Miami first marathon. I went ahead and I had some other goals, but at one point when I got to the race, I was like, you just got to cross that line, go qualify for Boston. It's going to be...
What's qualifying for Boston, time-wise?
So Boston, for people around our age, I think it's 18 to 34 or 36. I think it's 18 to 34. You have to go under 3 hours in a marathon.
Okay.
And there's also, that's for males as well. And there's also a buffer time too, to where if you aren't a certain amount of minutes under as well, sometimes throughout some years you don't get in. Sometimes they have this buffer, sometimes they don't. It kind of depends.
Depending on qualifications, like how many people qualify and stuff.
Yeah. And on like demand for the race as well.
Sure.
So that's a big factor there. And you have to also run like a Boston qualifying course, which is just basically a certified course, like nothing crazy. But just to make it official, like there are some like $60 marathons out there, and like some of them, if the course is not certified and it's not labeled as like a Boston qualifier, most of the time you can't really use that to qualify for these races either.
Sure. So I can't do the math right now in my head. We're behind the camera. What pace is 3 hours for a marathon?
3 hours for a marathon is about 6:53 per mile pace.
Under 7 minutes per mile.
Which is really tough. And the thing that makes it's funny because people think, oh, it's Miami Marathon, it's so flat, no problem, fast course, right?
Yeah, but it's also 80% humidity and 700 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kicker, right? Because you think like, oh, it's gonna be fast, but you just never know what you're gonna get. There's some years where the Miami Marathon has, I think, been like around 50 degrees, and there's other years like my third marathon when I ran it after Boston. I think I had a little break, so I think it was in like January or February of 2024 where I ran it, and it was just one of the worst weathers ever. They had to go ahead and issue a warning. Like I've never seen a marathon issue like through my email warning, be like, hey, like maybe you shouldn't go out as fast as you want to today.
Because it's so hot.
Yeah, because so it started out with around like 90. So that race, my first race, I got kind of lucky because the weather was decent, and it was around 60s and maybe in the mid 70s at the end, which is not maybe perfectly ideal weather for a marathon, but it's good enough.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. It's reasonable. And the one that I just ran in 2024, that weather was not reasonable.
Just scorching hot.
That weather was, oh my god, like 90-degree humidity to start. You even normally in a marathon, and when you train for it a lot, you go out there and you feel like good for even the first half marathon. Like, oh man, I feel amazing. When I started even on mile 1 and 2, I'm like, oh boy, it's gonna be a long day.
Yeah, that's crazy. So tell us a little bit about your Boston experience as your second, because you just went first, third. So touch on the Boston second.
Yeah, I kind of skipped. But Boston is an incredible race. I've never seen a race where the whole city like shuts down, like for you to run the marathon, which is incredible. The support and the cheering, you are like basically never alone, whether it's with whoever you are on the course or if there's just like people cheering in your area, which is incredible. and I've never seen like so many like faster people in one area as well. Like all these people that qualified, right? They come into one area, and it's just so insane to where like no matter what like group you're in or however fast you are, you're with someone. I didn't know. So my first marathon was one of trial. I did not know for Boston. I didn't know how hard the course was going to be actually until I went ahead and did it. It's a very misleading course too, because you think for the first 16 miles it's kind of downhill and you're like, oh, I'm crushing it, I'm gonna hit my PR, I got this, I'm having a great day, and all of a sudden it comes right back up at like the worst possible time because it's too close.
It's like the back half.
Yeah, it's like too far to where you can just sprint it away. You know, it's too far to where you can just be like, oh, I'm just gonna muscle this out. Because if you try to use all your energy and muscle it out, you still have like an extra 5 miles to go after the Hopkinton Hills, I believe it is. Sure. So it's just crazy. And another crazy thing too is when I'm running, I'm like, oh, like I'm younger, I'm faster, like I got this. Like most of the older people, like I can take. No, in that Boston Marathon, when I went out and died, I had some like 60, 70-year-old like men and women just see ya right by me. And I'm just thinking, are you kidding me? I've never really experienced that in a race. So definitely a humble experience for the first. I definitely didn't run. I think I ran my worst finish like at the time, but wouldn't take it back for anything. And a really special moment I want to tell everybody here is that when I was going by afterwards, and I never thought this because Boston, you know, is a bigger city, right? People like randomly would go up to me and be like, hey man, good job, like hey, awesome job, thank you for doing this for our city. And it made me feel like a superhero for the day, which was just incredible. And it blew my mind because I didn't think people, especially in like America, in a bigger city, I didn't think people were really like nice and down to earth like that. So it was a super special moment. And even when I went to board the plane, I think this was one of the planes next to me, they were like, oh, anybody who just ran the Boston Marathon, you could board the plane first, which was just a really nice
Yeah, that's super cool.
You know?
That's awesome, man. That's such a cool, I don't know, like you said, to get all the fast people that qualify in the same spot, that camaraderie, I don't know, that seems like quite the event. And I think it's important to notice that like not many people run marathons, right? So like just being able to run a marathon like that is such a cool thing, and it separates you quite a bit from, I guess, the rest of humanity. So do you know the stat by chance as to like how many people actually finish a marathon in their life?
I do. One of them, I believe, is about 2% of people have in their life have ran a marathon.
Okay.
So even by doing that and just completing it, you're already in like that 2%.
Yeah.
And I believe out of that 2% or approximately 2%, it's another like 1 or 2% qualify for the Boston Marathon. So you really are like the 1% of the 1% when you get there.
That's so
which
cool.
Doesn't even feel like that sometimes because like there's people that are just so good at running, you know?
Yeah.
But it really is when you look back at it, you're like, wow, like out of all these people, like and even in like race like the Miami Marathon too, like only a certain amount of people, maybe only like a handful, like 20 to 30 people out of the probably like around 3,000 to 4,000 that do the full marathon, like end up qualifying for the Boston Marathon. So it's really like only like a hand group pick of individuals really get to go ahead and race it. And honestly, it's an honor to do, and it's so fun to push myself and to see like what I can accomplish.
Yeah, that's such a cool experience. I feel like just to separate yourself is, anytime you can separate yourself like that, it's just awesome, right? Because it's like, okay, I've done this, I'm part of this group, I'm part of this group, so it's cool. I actually tried to run the marathon, the Chicago Marathon, back in like, I don't know, probably 2020 or 2021. I'm sitting on the plane. I think I flew down to Miami for the first time, and on the plane I bought Wi-Fi and I'm like reading this book, and it's like, do something you've always wanted to do but haven't done. I'm like, perfect, marathon, sign up for the marathon. The marathon's like a month or a month and a half out or something crazy. So I had always run. In the military, they say like you can do anything. It's just harder if you don't practice, right? So like that kind of mentality. But a full, I don't think I could. But so my mentality back then was I'll run like 19 miles here, 22 miles there. We'll call it good, and I'll be able to run this thing. Well, like 3 days before the race, I run like 22 miles, which I know you're not even supposed to do, I think, right? Like you're supposed to like ease into it. Isn't that the training regimen?
That's, a few days before is a lot. Normally around like 2 weeks is when you'd hit like that peak point.
Okay.
I've had somewhere I go like 22, so yeah.
I didn't do any studying, book reading. I went online, I was like, can I do this? And they're like, yeah, whatever. So I ran like 22 miles or something. And then the last run before I go, I'm going on like a 3 miler, just like a cool down, like, hey, I'm going to get ready for this and then hit it. And every step I took with like my right leg, it was numb. It was like numb, numb, numb. So I got like 3 miles in, I was done. I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna go to the race still and hope that it heals and try to run this thing. So I go to the Chicago Marathon, I start running. It's fine like the first 2 miles, mile 3 like hurts, mile 4 hurts. I think by like mid mile 4, I just dropped out of the race completely. I didn't even want to walk it, nothing. But yeah, every time I stepped, it was numb. I don't know if it was an IT band issue or whatever it was. But so that's the only experience I've had with a marathon. And I've always wanted to run one, but it feels like, I don't know, my weak body or something like won't let me. But that's cool that you've gotten to experience that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, you can definitely doing it, and for people who are just getting into like running or starting this, I personally believe there's like 2 types of people, right? There's ones that want to go ahead and send it and kind of did what you did, although you almost ran one like before you actually ran one,
Literally,
which maybe like arguably maybe hurt more than it helped.
Definitely,
ironically.
no, definitely, not maybe, definitely.
So yeah, there's a group of people who like want to go ahead and do what you did and like want to send it. It's like, I don't care, I didn't practice a lot. That's the first race I want to do. It's on my mind. I want to do it. And then there's people that are like, oh, I want to go ahead and just slowly go up and take it step by step. And I'm one of those people that were like, I guess when I want to do something, like I want to go out there and just crush it. Like I didn't want to just finish the marathon. I wanted to crush it. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm really gonna train for it. I'm gonna go ahead and give this my all. And I just slowly climbed from like 5K to 10K to half marathon to full. And I thought like as doing like that, it definitely makes it better. And it's kind of that mentality of like, oh, like how do you eat an elephant? Like just one bite at a time.
Sure,
type
sure.
of thing.
And I think there's a lot to be said in enjoying the process too. Like even in business, like when you start a business or are trying to build a business, which I know a lot of these people do that are watching, is like it's one step at a time, and don't forget to enjoy the process, because the process is what makes you appreciate where you end up. So I think it's kind of a similar mindset. And I think a lot of people that run marathons are probably good in the business world as well. I think it's kind of like ultimately a commitment thing. Like, how committed are you to making this happen? You're part of the 1%. It's just a mindset thing, which I think a lot of people share, which is awesome.
Yeah, and,
So-
and the big key for me, especially someone who like works full time, is really like your mornings are very sacred and very important. Because I mean, when you get older, have kids, you work late, like you never know what's gonna happen later in the day. But the morning, if you can get up early enough for most jobs, like that can be yours.
Sure.
So it's very big to go and make that happen. I even have a group that I'm in that's for Tuesdays and Fridays at Tropical Track at 5:30 a.m. that I go to, and it works just perfectly with my schedule. And there's also a lot of like faster runners there as well, so that just being around that group is awesome. But just to be able to fit it in and to have a community with me, because there were some times where I just felt alone, sometimes doing these like harder workouts, and it didn't get me like too sad, but I wasn't as motivated. But with people around me, I was like,
Oh yeah,
this is
it's so
amazing.
motivating. Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And it just accountability purposes too. It's so awesome. So what now? You said under 3 hours for a marathon, right? What's going through your head, and what are you thinking about, like during that time when you're just running for so long?
So that's a good question. A lot of people think I'm crazy because they're like, oh, you don't listen to music and all that, and I normally don't. And the reason why when I'm
You
racing,
raw dog it?
Yeah, I raw dog it, man. Not with fueling, but with the music. Yes, I raw dog it.
Okay, that's crazy.
And I like doing that because you really get to listen to your body more, and also you get to really just take it in for what it is, and just see like the scenery, and you're not too like into yourself. You're really just taking the environment for what it is, which I think is very special. But for fueling stuff, I definitely use, when I do marathons especially, because you just use so much energy, it's very easy to go like hypoglycemic. So I do have like certain like glucose energy gels that I use. I actually keep them on me just so like I can control them. And around, for me, and around the pace I'm at, it's normally like every 5 miles I'd go ahead and take one until like mile 20. And that way too, you can help avoid like a bonk, and your body will have like the nutrients in it to be able to push forward.
That's interesting. That's one thing that I never did when I went on my long runs, was like I didn't like take anything to drink, or I didn't bring any gels, which I think I should have done. There's a point in my life where I'm gonna run a marathon. Like, as long as my body lets me and I can get through this stinking thing healthy, but like I still want to do that. And I'm learning a lot just sitting here talking with you about this. So it's kind of cool. Like the audience, we get to do this podcast, but I'm also learning as well. So this is great, man. Now what's your next step? You've run 4 marathons. So actually, what's your fourth marathon? Because you didn't tell us about that.
Oh, that's right. So now we're on number 4, right? So this was one of my most recent ones. I had ran. So when I ran my second Miami third marathon, I was a little like upset with my time. Like I trained so hard, probably the hardest I've ever trained, and the weather was just so bad that I didn't end up running a great time. Although I ran 3:05 for my city, and I was like, that was
Meant to be.
I was adjusting my goals, because I was making different goals from A goal, C goal, B. One of my like maybe E goals was like, screw it, let's just hit 3:05 in the city, let's just do it.
That's awesome.
So I ended up hitting that, and I was like, oh, like I'm a man of the city. I think my Instagram caption was like 3:05 to 3:05, something like that,
That's
something just that's very cool to just go ahead and say. So I did that though, and I was like, man, like I'm. Like, I don't know, is it me? Like, am I not, like, a great marathoner? Like, because a lot of my times you can sometimes translate up, and through other runners you can kind of see about where you'd be, and I'm like, man, like, I know I'm much faster, and, like, I did miss Boston qualifying because it would be, like, 3 hours, so I was like, man, like, I got to do another one, like, soon, because I know I have that in me.
Would you have run Boston again if you would have qualified?
So I don't know, so my fourth marathon, I don't know if I would have ran if I'd qualified for Boston already, which is interesting.
Because you would have ran Boston if you would have qualified for Boston.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my progression, so going to my fourth marathon, I was like, you know what? I want to turn things a little bit more in my favor. I wanted to get a good weather race and a good course. So I went on the internet searching around, and I found one in Washington called the Super Marathon. And for those wondering, it's not more than a marathon. It is just a marathon. And it's really cool too because it goes through this tunnel. Like you can't see anything, and it's almost like this trippy experience running through a tunnel.
That's wild.
Before, and it's like going in. I was even almost freaking out because I've never really ran in a tunnel before. But for 3 miles, it was through a tunnel, which was very cool. And
is it dark?
Oh, it is dark to the point where you need like one of those headlamps to have on your.
So people are running with headlamps.
Yeah, you
Okay.
almost have to run with a headlamp. You can raw dog that, but it's very tough, and you don't want to like slip and eat it in the middle of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So like, and even with the lamp, I was like, oh, I got a lamp, I got this, and I look forward, and I'm like, dang, I really can't. Like, I see this little small dot of light in the distance.
That's kind of a cool experience, man. Like just running. Like, so what mile was that tunnel at?
So that was, I think, like going through in the super marathon was like mile 6 or 7. It started.
So early.
And yet you see this little dot like slowly get bigger, and that's like even with your headlamp, that's your only light. Like anything past like your headlamp, you kind of can't even see. So you can only see around 3 to 4 feet in front of you. And I even had some dudes with me in a pack too, maybe 2 other guys that were with me. And even then, we couldn't really see anything. And we're like, oh my goodness,
that's such a cool experience.
And it was already like cold there, which was awesome because I had planned that to happen. It was around 50 degrees, like perfect marathon weather. When I got in the tunnel, it had to be like 40. Like it was really cold in that tunnel.
That's crazy. So that was your fourth, was Washington, you said?
Yeah.
The super marathon. Okay. And how did that one end up?
So I was going through, like I started out kind of steady. I got my flow. The course is a downhill course too, so I just kept on going down. I think it's 1,500 meters like down, which is almost a mile.
Sure.
And I just kept going. I kept getting my flow. This one was an awesome marathon to the point where I just got faster as it went on, which was insane. And once I hit 18 and I felt good, I was like, oh yeah, like this,
burners.
I'm rocking this. So I keep going through, and I just keep negative splitting. And I think I started out like at this one, I really wanted to go around like probably the realistic goal was like around mid 240s. The super A goal was like sub 240, like around like 239 something. And I was like, okay. So I started out around like 6:15 pace, which is more like 243. And I think my first like half marathon split was around 122 ish, which I did think was maybe slightly slow for the course. But I'm like, you know what? I want to go out. I want to relax. I can always get faster as I go on. It's okay. So I go out like with a 122, and then I started to just do whatever. And then all of a sudden, I just like picked up a little bit. I looked at my watch, and I started to go like around like 6:05, and I was like, okay, this is like a good mile, but this is a little fast, but whatever. Like I'm feeling good. Let me just go with it. And I just start going down and down and down to where I start like going when I looked at my watch and it said like 5:56 once. I'm like, oh my god, I broke a.
That's crazy.
Like mile in a marathon, and I was like, oh my god.
At what, like mile 21, 2 or 22 or something?
I think this is around like 15 or 16.
Oh, 15 or 16.
Like
okay.
5:56, and I just kept holding. I'm like, all right, I'm perfect right here. Let's just keep holding it. And then I get to the point where I'm like around 40K in, which is around probably like mile 24, 25. I see myself start to maybe get slightly slower. And I was like, oh, like at this point, like I could probably go ahead and hold and run like a 2:45. And I'm like, you know what? No, like you didn't come this far to come this far. You know what I mean? I did not. So I'm like, you know what? I have 2K more. It's a little more mile. Let's empty the tank. Right?
Wow.
Let's just go for this. And I just keep going and going. And then I almost like get faster. It's all downhill. In that race too, actually, I think I started in mile 13. I was probably around like 4th or 5th place. And by the time I got to like 24, I think I'd passed the 2nd place guy. So I was in 2nd in the race, and I was like, oh my God, like let's go do this. I'm like, you know what? Like let's go find first. Like let's go see if I can find this guy. It turned out later that I realized like he finished well before me, but I was like, whatever. Like at the moment, I was like, oh, let's go ahead and let's go for it. I come through and I just keep getting faster and faster. My last mile was like, I think my fastest one, I went like a 5:48. I didn't even know at the time, but I was just cooking. And then I come through the line and end up running like a 2:41, and I was like,
that's
amazing,
crazy.
And it was the best. Like I had just I didn't even have a lot of troubles in the marathon, honestly. So like coming through, I was like, oh my God, like I just did that. You know,
That's
I was like,
crazy.
Wow. Like
You were struggling going into that race, you said, the 4th marathon?
So before, I guess my progression going through, I went in my first one, I had a really good race, and I ran a 2:55, and then mostly people say, oh, like your first marathon's going to be your worst, you know, like you're just so new to it. The marathon is a very heavily experienced race compared to any other like distance ones, so I just thought, oh, I'm just going to get like automatically better each one, and that's not how it turned out for me. Like I went from 2:55 first Miami, 3:14 for Boston, and then 3:05 on my third, and I was like, oh man, like this is just such a weird progression. Like normally, and I'm in really good shape. I do a lot of speed stuff. I put in the training, and I was just like, man, is this just, I don't know if this just isn't for me, or like what's going on here? Like maybe I'm just not the best marathoner, you know? But I think part of the reason to that too was also just like the environments that I'm running in. And just being in Miami, it's very tough to run in, but it makes you strong. And people even call it poor man's altitude because of how humid it is. So to be able to come here and to train in that, and even to do other races, I'm like, you know what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I just thought, I'm like, let me give this just one more shot with this 4th marathon here. Like I really think if I get a different environment, I can go ahead and just have like the most amazing day. So that was the plan there. And those were some of like, I guess the problems I really had to overcome. And now with that marathon time, I'm planning on doing the next Boston, which the sign up is actually coming up in like 2 to 3 weeks.
So you qualified?
Yeah, so I qualified for Boston again. I qualified
at Washington.
For Chicago, the one that you ran.
Okay. You have to qualify for that one?
Yeah, the Bank of America, Chicago.
Oh, I think I did it different because I didn't have to qualify for anything.
Yeah, I was going to say that earlier. You might have did another one. The big like world major one, you have to qualify for, unless if you did it through charity.
I didn't donate anything. I just bought a ticket.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe it was tomorrow, but that's cool. So I qualified for those two. So I want to do those two on the schedule for sure. And then my time lasts a couple years for this, but I want to do Berlin as well, which I also got
Germany
for.
Yeah, Germany.
The qualifying time for that is actually one of the hardest out of the majors. I think it's 2:45 for our age.
What are the majors?
Oh, I didn't even explain that. That's right. So the world majors in marathoning, there are a certain amount of races. I think it's 5 or 6 races that are just some of the biggest, most iconic marathons in the world. And I'm going to try to name them all right now. We have Boston, Chicago, and New York. So 3 of them are in the United States.
Sure.
And then there's Berlin. There's the London UK Marathon, which is the one where people try to break like Guinness World Records in. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Like people just like fastest marathon in bananas.
Oh, that's wild.
A lot of, like really funny stuff like that happens at this marathon. It's crazy.
How good of a shape do you have to be in to run a marathon in a banana suit, bro? That's amazing. Oh, that's so great.
There will be other stuff. There will be people who like run marathons like in a 3-person costume, or people that run like handcuffed together, like just the craziest things in this race.
And I can't even do one.
There's one video of like this guy who dressed as Big Ben, and you know how they
Who's
have,
Big
like,
Ben? Like the Roethlisberger, like the quarterback?
No, like the I'm talking about like the clock tower.
Big Ben.
Did I say? maybe I just like said that wrong and had like a blank, but the like the big clock tower in like the UK.
Okay, I don't even know what you're talking about.
I thought it was.
No, you're probably right. I just have no idea what Big Ben is.
That's funny. But they would dress as that, and you know how sometimes the like when they say like your the time and everything in the whole race is like there's like a banner thing. This guy ran. He was just as a clock tower, and he couldn't like fit under the thing to finish. And the race people had to help him like duck.
Oh
under,
my god!
Really
How
funny.
tall was he?
Oh my god, I don't know.
Bro, he's got to be like 20 feet tall.
No, it's the thing is with that costume, the score thing is normally only like around like 10 feet high.
Oh.
You don't expect anybody to be taller, and this guy comes with this like costume just running in.
He's running a marathon 12 feet tall?
So yeah, that one's crazy.
That's insane.
Oh, before I forget the last, I guess so there's 6 because the last one is the Tokyo Marathon.
Tokyo? That
Tokyo
would be
trip.
cool. Yeah. That's awesome. So you're going to try to hit all 6 of those?
I would love to. And one of my goals too is to go ahead and travel the world with running.
Sure.
And also, it just gives me like an extra reason to like want to go. I mean, I already want to go ahead and want to do like just explore Europe and just to see all these other places. But if I can have an extra reason on it, then it'll definitely give me that push to get out there.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome, man. So it's one of your goals to do the 6, the big 6 you called it. Now, let me dive into this Ironman.
Oh.
I feel like that's the natural progression, right? Isn't that the natural progression, like half full Ironman?
There's a lot of runners some runners end up getting into it. The thing is for once you get into triathlon stuff is like the time commitment for running is already can be a lot.
Particularly for marathons, right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah, for marathons it can be a big commitment, but even then it's not crazy. And even if you think about it for people just like watching at home, if you were to even go out on a 2-3 mile run and you're like 10-minute pace, it's like 20 to 30 minutes of your day, so it's not crazy. But for once you do triathlon, you have to have a place you can swim.
Right here, bro. You can use this when you're training.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Or like, if you get like a gym, because like for the lap pools too, to be able to like do something comfortably. Or also the bikes get super expensive. Like the carbon bikes can run you like 10K plus. Like,
dang,
it's a lot of money, and then also commitment to be able to go ahead and do all 3.
Sure.
And for me personally, especially when I'm younger now, and I'm trying to also like have like a good like work life and running. I don't think I want to make that like commitment to that like just yet. I'm still like in my marathon era here.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to that as of now. Although it would be cool to go ahead and I think at one point in my life at least try a triathlon.
Sure.
Just to see, even if it's a little sprint, just to do it. I feel like would be a very cool experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would go for like like half full Ironman per se, but to at least like try it, it would be cool. And you never know if you don't try it.
Dabble in it, yeah. How old are you?
So I am 25. Turned 25 in June.
Turned 25 in June, so you just turned 25. Okay, so you're crushing this, man. You still got a long. What's like the peak of like I guess the running career? Would you say age-wise?
So running, I feel like a lot of people age like fine wine. One of the greatest marathoner, honestly, or like debatably the greatest marathoner in history, like Eliud Kipchoge. I think he's around 38, 39, and he's like still running like very, very good marathon times. So I would say that people can like competitively go to like almost 40, which is crazy because a lot of sports have like earlier peaks, and I feel like even with distance running, even when people go out from like the pro area, you could still continue running and still like compete on a master's level or still keep doing it. There's been people who are like 80, 90 years old who have completed marathons before. Yeah. I think the world record might be someone that was like 102 or 103, and there was like a little children's book like written about this guy. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but you can really, it's something you can keep and really do for a long time that doesn't cost you a ton of money, unless if you go for the races. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes the race fees can push it up, and people like the nice carbon-bladed shoes for the racers, those can get a little expensive, but compared to a lot of other hobbies, it's nothing crazy.
Yeah, it's you just need shoes and a couple clothes and you're good to go.
Yeah, and especially for
very low cost of entry, low barrier to entry, anybody can do it. Makes total sense.
Absolutely, especially that's why I think there's like almost no excuse for like run clubs. You don't have to pay as long as you like have shoes on you, which most people do. It can be like very low cost at the point where like your only fee is like maybe parking $5 a time for when you go. Like, I mean, it's really, really low cost and very acceptable and like accessible to people.
That's awesome, man. You're kind of motivating me to get back into the running thing. Watch, now you're gonna get me to sign up for another marathon and get me all hyped up, and here we go, and all this time commitment and stuff. I feel like, so let's dive into this here. Back when I used to wear a Whoop all the time, and I went gung-ho about this for a little while, but I think it was if you reduce your resting heart rate by 10 beats per minute over the course of the year, it's like 2.2 million beats per year that you save your heart just by reducing your resting heart rate by 10 beats per minute. So one thing that I know, running is a very good way to reduce that resting heart rate. I think Michael Phelps has one of the best heart rates at like 34 or 36 beats per minute. Like, it was insanely low, right? But you think, if your heart has to work like that little, or if your heart doesn't have to beat that often, like, life longevity just shoots through the roof. So I think running has that very quality attribute where, like, yes, it does create a lower resting heart rate, and I know a lot of people do it for that reason. So it's such a healthy thing. That's awesome. On the other end of that, yes, I think a lot of people want to run or train for marathons or Ironmans, but they can't financially afford to, right? Like, you're in a position where you have that luxury and you don't have kids, for example, and like, it does require a lot of time. So that's super cool that you're in that space, but I do understand the struggle that some other people have is like, hey, I just can't run because I can't commit that much time. I got 4 kids, I got a wife, I got to make rent, I got to make my car payment, all those other things. Have you ever experienced that, or has anybody like mentioned that to you at all?
I will say a lot of things about like running in the running community is about like going ahead and being flexible. And even those days where you just really don't want to do it, like, it's almost that mantra of like do it anyway type
Sure.
of thing, which is a little tough, but it is like you can find your way. And I've seen even people too. You wouldn't believe how fast the stroller moms are in these races. Let me tell you, man. Like, I've seen people too. They're like, oh, it's running, like, I'll breathe so hard, and stroller mom comes out and just drops me last mile of the 5K, like.
That's amazing.
So yeah, people like the one amazing thing about our running community is there's so many people who are like moms and dads and grandparents that just could go out and run, and an amazing runner could truly be anyone. And like, that to me is what the running community is all about. Just seeing people with their daily lives, they go through all their other stuff, but when they're in the race, they're in their zone and they just go out and crush it.
That's amazing. My understanding, you really like cards, you collect cards. Can you dive into that for me? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I collect like baseball, basketball, football cards, etc. So I got into that when, I guess the story starts when I was in basketball camp. Like, my first exposure to really sports cards was me going ahead and like playing in like even 3v3 tournaments or like 5-on-5, whatever they had in the camp. And that's how I would go ahead and like win cards, right? So those were the cards that I got, because it was kind of hard. There weren't many card shops around my area, and they would be also pretty expensive too. So my only real exposure to those was to really go ahead and camp and to try to go ahead and win cards. So I go ahead and I just start playing, I start winning those. And I guess also even further back, I almost forgot, maybe my love of cards first started from around like Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh era.
Oh, yes.
Which I don't know if you.
Oh,
if you did that
yes.
too.
Oh, my gosh. The books with the sleeves and the big books and the little books. And, oh, my. Crazy collection I had.
And yeah, so I guess segueing back in a little bit, so I got ahead and I like found my love for cards again. It wasn't, so this was like, I guess, a little bit of a time skip here, going to like 2020, to where I was like, oh, I was asking one of my good friends now, and I was like, oh, what are you on your phone so much? He's like, oh, dude, I'm looking through eBay through cards. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. I remember when I used to like look at cards. He's like, hey, like come out there, go to a show with me, man. Let's just go and just see what's up. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, let's do it. And we would go around and just make like, not even like some of the like worst videos of us just like filming stuff around. The quality was bad. It's kind of funny looking back and seeing that. And then we got to the point where we were just like, oh, screw it, let's just go ahead and start like a YouTube channel. And then we started to just make like an eBay store, and just started like go around just messing around, whatever, and started out with whatever, a couple like 10, 50, $100, whatever we had on us. And now it's really gone ahead and grown to where the channel it's called Breakout Cards on YouTube, if anybody's interested or into sports cards. It got to about like 13K subs, I think, what we're at
Nice.
now. And we both have more of our niches. I actually collect mostly vintage cards.
Sure.
Because for me, that just to have like that innate like intrinsic value for me, I think is something that's very cool and interesting. And for those of you who don't know as well, as of like 2020, and sports cards had been rising up like kind of steadily ever since, but in 2020 there was just an absolute boom in the price of a lot of the sports cards.
You know who's a big like reason I think that sports cards were taking off again or are taking off again, Gary Vaynerchuk.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Bro, this man, I swear, anything he pushes on social media, he's kind of like a guy that can push anything and it's going to go because it's him. He's got
Yeah.
such a big following and all this stuff. But I swear, he has a love for cards and he created a card company and he's been pushing it all over social media and it's been very interesting. But are you familiar with him?
Oh yeah, very.
I love him, dude.
He
I
always-
love him.
Recently, I feel like Gary used to set up actually at the Sports Card National. He used to, I think, set up his own table, but then he went to now with like the creation of VFriends, right?
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and a company called I think CGC now like slabs them as well. Have you ever seen like cards in those like slabs and have a grade on them? I'm not sure if you're too familiar.
Is it like a plastic
that?
sheet with a grade you're talking about?
So it's
What do you
like
mean by slab?
It's kind of like a plastic, not plastic. It's hard to explain, but it's like an encapsulated.
Yes.
So you can encapsulate your collectible, and it'll show like the name and everything, and like a grade to the right. Typically, is how they
10 is a perfect grade.
go.
Right?
Yes, it ranges from 1 to 10. So you're kind of familiar.
Yeah.
And like Gary was able to get his cards to be graded by one of the like 4 major grading companies. And he had them up, and now he's in like the normally the corporate section going around, and he has like his whole like VFriend setup,
Yeah.
which is really cool because he kind of created his like own like set of
So
cards.
Vince
Cool.
McMahon with WWE, he said that this was his motivation, was to like kind of create a character or like a conglomeration of characters, and he did that with VFriends. And I've followed this man for so long, dude. Like, it's so cool to see him just roll out and do anything he wants. Like, this man can do anything he wants. But he's actually the reason I dropped out of college.
Yeah, that's right. I think we were just talking around like off the podcast, and you did go ahead and tell me that. And funny enough, I had kind of a little story with him too. So I was at the 2023. I didn't go to the 2024 national this year, unfortunately, because I was focusing, doing like CPA stuff, etc. But the 2023 national, he was there, and we for the channel, he actually one of his, I think it was, I'm sure it was one of his like associates reached out and asked just to like get an interview, because he also collects like a lot of non-sports stuff, and we show a lot of like non-sports vintage cards on the Breakout Cards YouTube. And my buddy who like I run it with, his name's Ryan, he went ahead and he got to go ahead and interview him, and I was gonna go too, but it turned out that my flight happened on that day, and I didn't get to
no,
meet, like,
dude! I would have
Andy in
canceled
person.
that flight. I would have canceled that flight and ran back home and called it a ultra marathon.
I didn't have any like hotel plan either.
That's
That is pretty
crazy.
funny, though.
He's one
But
of-
yeah, I didn't get the chance. I saw him like from a distance, and I talked to a few people. We tried to move up the meeting early, but it just didn't
didn't
totally
work.
happen. But maybe eventually I'll get the chance like to meet him.
Yeah.
And such. But it was just like a cool little funny story where I'm like I want to meet him too, and I just didn't get the chance, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you're kidding me.
He's one of the guys I definitely got to meet, because he's made an impact on my life and obviously a lot of people's lives. He's just a great guy. But yeah, man, that's so cool. Okay, so your love for cards came from Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Now you started this YouTube channel, which is called what again?
Breakout cards.
Breakout Cards. All right. If you're on YouTube, I'm going to put that below, so it's going to be linked just so they can find you.
Thank you.
Dive into it a little bit more. So what are you guys doing? You're collecting vintage cards and you're selling them or flipping them, or what's that process?
So-
what's the goal?
I guess if I had to explain like Breakout Cards, we have like our YouTube channel where we go out and give like information about cards, information about sets. Sometimes we even do videos on like top 20 vintage baseball cards that have sold on eBay in the month of June, for example.
Oh, so it's like an infos. Okay.
A little bit like that. And then there's also our main videos, I say, would be the like card show videos.
Okay.
And I try to make it out to some when I can. As of recently, it's been a little bit less, but I'll at least try to see if I can go to the local scene if there's a card show around
So you're
here.
vlogging the shows.
Yes.
Okay.
It's mostly my friend Ryan who does a lot of that stuff, and we also, another part of our videos are when we submit these cards to go ahead and get graded, as I was saying.
So you actually take other people's cards and submit them to get graded for them.
Yes, other people's.
Okay, so it's a service.
Yes, other people's, my own inventory, and then either like stuff that's going to go into my personal collection or my partner Ryan's personal collection.
Okay.
As well.
How big is your collection?
So I guess originally I just had a binder full of cards, and I got lucky because I sold them for a lot more than I probably could now. with like COVID and everything. So I got some money on me. And I sold a lot of my other like Pokemon stuff where I didn't feel like it was too rare to be able to go around and keep. My collection now, I did a really good job consolidating. In my true personal collection, I probably have around like 40 to 50 cards, but there are 40 to 50 cards that are like stuff that I really like and stuff that's like in my niche, stuff that like is also pretty rare as well, and something that I see the value in, and also that like others see a decent value in as well.
Is that more like the vintage style that you're talking about?
Yes, and I don't think I have. Oh, there's one modern card I have in my collection, just because this one was just a cool one that I picked up. And a buddy gave me a gift card on eBay, so I decided to go ahead and get something. But it's a LeBron James, a Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade card when they were all rookies. And there's one card in the set called Topps Matrix from 2003 where they're all in different teams, but they're on the same card. And I just thought that was cool.
That's cool.
And even though that one isn't like, it's definitely like my least valuable card in my collection, it's just cool to have for like reminiscent purposes. And I was like, oh, I just want something to like represent that era, you know? So I thought that just.
How much does a card like that cost?
So a card like this one, there's a decent amount of them out there. So I think I ended up paying. I have like a mid-grade one, so I paid around like $30 for mine.
And how much is it worth today?
Crazy. Today it was a recent pickup, so I think it's still around like $30.
Okay,
So that one's nothing crazy on that. Yeah, definitely. I think by far like one of my cheapest cards, but just something that meant a lot to me through that era. And I went to the games. Speaking of my own person, like I went to the games. So my birthday is June 20th, and there was one of the championships two of the championships they won. One was in 2006 with Wade, the first championship ever, and the other one was I think 2013. We beat the Spurs. I think that was the second one that was also on my birthday. So it was
That's crazy. That's cool.
So I'm like, yeah, I want something that, I want to collect them. I want something that can represent that. And I'm not too familiar with like the ultra modern card market, which with like the newer cards and a lot of the autos, and which are very cool. But to me, it was just I don't want to spend a crazy amount of money for a card that's just going to go up and down and this and that sideways, and something that, because it was manufactured to be like a lot of cards are numbered nowadays in order to avoid like what happened in the junk wax era, where there was the overproduction of cards, which means the value just went down. So I wanted to get something that really like I could get and not really worry about the price of it at all, and just have like that nostalgic value. So I ended up choosing that card, so I could get one card instead of have like a bunch of different ones from them, and keep that.
Interesting. Okay. So back in high school, I had binders of Pokemon cards. I'm talking 3 binders probably. And I sold them to my high school security guard. And this was like shortly before that the climb of cards started happening. I got bit by a mosquito there. But shortly before the climb started happening, and then I just remember looking back, I maybe sold it like $200, but I had, I'm telling you, so many cards. Like probably like 2,000 cards, whatever. And I just remember looking back, like I should not have sold him those cards for as cheap as I did. He got a great deal. He knew what he was doing. I didn't want the cards anymore. I felt like too old for the cards. It was like I needed to kind of clear that out and like get that out of the way. But hindsight's 2020, and I wish I wouldn't have sold them because I would have made quite a bit more money after. But it is what it is. So that's kind of my experience with cards. And then my dad is super into collecting cards and like Matchbox cars. So like he has a massive amount in the basement. He's got this big collection. I don't know how much it's worth or how many cards or whatever, but he does that. He does cards, comic books, and Matchbox cars. Now, there was one point where we were trying to find a Sidney Crosby hockey card. And we were opening these NHL packs, and we would open them like 2 every Sunday or whatever. So I'd always go and I'd open them up and finally get this card. And it's like super rare. My dad's like super pumped up. We slide it in one of those sleeves, one of the plastic sleeves. And me being me, I don't know, maybe I was like 6 at the time. I start like chewing on it. Bro, my saliva got in the case, and I ruined the card, and my dad was very frustrated with me. So that was crazy. I was super frustrated. He was mad. It was just not good. But then I also remember like going to my grandma and grandpa's house, and we would hang the Matchbox cars with a nail. We would nail them to the wall. But the whole basement wall was filled, like probably from that wall to there and to there, all filled with Matchbox cars. So I don't know, a couple thousand of them. That was such a cool, like, just collectible thing to have, and great memories. It was so much fun.
Well, I mean, yeah, I definitely got to see some pictures for that. To see, I'm curious to see what's in there now. And there's always, that's the coolest thing too. Whenever he has collections, like, and you do, like, I've done some collection visits before and even bought full collections, and you just never know what you're gonna find, you know?
Sure, yeah. I think he's kind of, I don't know if he's still collecting or if he's in the process of selling, but he got married, I want to say 2-3 years, no, it would have been like 4 years ago now. And he sold a bunch of cards to like pay for the wedding. Like, so he's done like
Oh, wow.
pretty well on some collectible cards and toys and whatever. But yeah, that's my experience with cards and whatnot stopped when I was probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9. But it was fun, and it's cool to hear you talk about that. And I know it's kind of picking back up now. One of my other buddies, Gil, he actually just moved up to Tennessee, but he was in the card collecting space as well. I would have loved to introduce you, but.
So I wanted to also talk about, I guess, and draw some parallels, right, with like real estate and cards, right? Because I know a lot of people on your channel are very familiar with it. And I guess I'll start out by saying, one, there are a lot of people that are into real estate that are also into sports cards.
Sure.
Believe it or not, like a lot of them, because they have the time to go out to these shows, and they have some, with the spare time, they can go ahead, and they also kind of see it as similar as, like with cards too, I would argue, just because of the, one, cards are very like marketable. Like, people don't realize that you can go on eBay and look at like the last sold and like other like auction comps, if you will, and it's not too terribly difficult to comp most cards. Now, there are some rare ones where you really have to know what you're doing to kind of figure it out, but with most of them you can kind of find your way, which is interesting. And it's almost kind of comparable to, I guess, like condos, for example, to where like, or anything in like an HOA, to where like if there's similar style houses, you can be like, oh, this sold for this, so this one, 2 beds about that. You can kind of like piece together, at least get a gist of like what things are worth.
100%. So I think this brings us into a good point. Flipping anything is like flipping real estate. Flipping real estate is just the highest level of buying and selling things. You might be able to argue mergers and acquisitions, businesses, and real estate. I would say that those are two kind of like the top things as far as flipping. But flipping cards is the same exact thing as flipping real estate. Same with flipping shoes. Same with flipping cars. Everybody's, I feel like, gets into cards, shoes, and vehicles because it's the lowest barrier of entry. You need the least amount of money to get in, right? And then you're off to the races. But if they just took that same amount of knowledge and directed it directly to real estate, they would realize that it's the same exact thing. It's just a higher barrier of entry. People look at it and they get frustrated and they get a little bit scared because, yeah, there's a lot more money involved, but it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. So I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah, it was something I wanted to talk about. So yeah, with the first thing, with a lot of the people, like a lot of the groups, there are a lot of the groups, those two definitely coincide. And with just it's interesting to see like how like marketable certain cards were. I didn't know that like before starting, and I also didn't realize like for even like the shoe game, for example, a lot of the apparel game, like there are some, the holy grails of like collecting, where like certain shoes will be worth like 50 to 100K, but even some sports cards, I think the public record, I want to say it was it was a mantle. I think it was a PSA 9 1952 Topps mantle. I think it was it $12 million? Or
That's crazy. $12 million for a card?
I believe
that's
amazing. It was by Heritage Auctions. You'd have to look it back to get the exact numbers because I forgot them on the top of my head.
Yeah, but that's amazing.
It's around like that area.
That's amazing.
It's like the highest sale for a sports card. So it's just crazy to think like it can go up to there. And what's really cool with sports card collecting and stuff is you can go ahead and, one, as a collector, you can make it you, right? Like, it's all about, there's no right or wrong way to collect. And
your preference. Like your vintage, for example. You really like vintage.
Exactly, and it's like your preference to collect, and you can find too a lot of cards that are maybe rare. Maybe the company's only seen it like graded 1 or 2 times in like the history of the company. Like, there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. You can like discover new cards. A lot of foreign issue cards are very tough here, and there might be very few of them that survived. Or maybe a PSA 1 or 2 is the highest in existence because that's what it is. And I think that's very cool.
Wait, a PSA 1 or 2 would be like a very low quality card. But since it's the only one in existence, it's valuable? Exactly. Is that kind of what you mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Like even one of the holy grails of sports card collecting, the T206 Honus Wagner, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the highest unaltered one was, I believe, a PSA 5. Is I think the highest one in exist.
Super
if I'm not
mediocre.
mistaken, and that's like, you know, like 5 out of 10. That's kind of like right in the middle. And even if you can have like a 1 or 2 that looks decent, that's probably in today's market like $3 to $5 million
Jeez.
for just that one card.
You said a what card? A Tito's.
A T206 Honus Wagner
What's that?
baseball card.
Tito's 6 Honus
So
Wagner.
the T206 set, they came in cigarette cards actually, and people still even have the boxes, but they're almost, I hate to say, not even worth buying because there's only most of the time one card in the box, and that's even sometimes like there were some of the, because they came with cigarettes, like cards were not a standalone product until the 1952 Top set. So when you got like these cards, they came with something else, and at this one starting, it was cigarettes. And there's also with these, it's weird. You either get a chance of nothing, and there's only one card, by the way, so you get a chance of nothing. You get a chance of pulling a bird, I think, because there's also like a bird set around that area, or you can pull a player. And the thing is with the Honus Wagner, it was it's a very short print in the set, and apparently the story goes, although there's been some people to say that it's a little different, but that he was apparently anti-smoking for whatever reason, or there was some sort of dispute that came up. So the company had a lot of them pulled, but unfortunately, because it was too late, some of them did make their way out into the public.
Sure.
And that's what kind of like made the story, and also the story's made divided too, and that's kind of the story of like the Honus Wagner.
That's crazy. That's a wild background right there. Awesome. Well, Steven, thank you so much for coming. Much appreciated. We talked about running. We talked about cards. We're getting bitten by mosquitoes. You got a bite right here, a couple on the ankle. Y'all can't see our feet, but our ankles are getting eaten up a little bit. So I've sprayed I spray every 3 weeks. And it's interesting because they're pretty bad right now, but the past couple days, they've been fine. But yeah, so we're going to cut it with the mosquitoes, and yeah, so we talked about running, cards, and kind of your background, right?
Yeah,
awesome.
And thank you guys. I hope you love me as much as these mosquitoes did. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And then for other stuff, I guess for anything about like cards, or if you guys have any other questions, even like one to Alec obviously, but even to me, like my Instagram is just my name, Steven Lazar, and then my YouTube channel is Breakout Cards. If you guys wanted to go ahead and check that out and really get the deep dive and see really more of what I was talking about there.
Absolutely, that's going to be right under the video here, both his Instagram and YouTube. Guys, make sure you like and subscribe this. We're trying to grow this channel, and we appreciate each and every one of you that follow along. Lots of different people on here, and it's so cool to see all these different perspectives. So thank you so much. Thanks, Steven.